eminent chief is exactly what the Mampusis are looking for, and that is exactly what we are asking for. However, we wish to state, contrary to the allegation made by the Kusa People Congress, accusing us of disregarding due process, that it is always they, the Kusasi, who disregard due process and sought to use violence to achieve their selfish goals. We ask them the following questions. Where was their use of due process when they refused to seek for restraining order in a court against performance of a traditional funeral which has nothing to do with Kusasi culture, but instead their youth chose to use violence by igniting a conflict? Where was their use of due process when instead of going to court to seek restraining order against customer Eskin Bokunaba, Alhaji Seydou Abagre, and instead they chose to use threats and cause mayhem through violence? Where was their use of due process when Kusasi youth shot and injured 3 military men on patrols at the Bubola area? Where was their use of due process when Kusasi youth shot and killed a policewoman at the Kwawiga area? Where was their use of due process when this Kusasi youth shot and killed an innocent immigration officer close to the police station? They only recognize due process when it satisfies their selfish interests. Point number 3, the Kusa People Congress also says Bawku has a chief and is not akin to the situation that existed in the bank, hence no need for mediation. Yes, we agree with them that Bawku has a chief, in the person of Bawku Nawa Alhaji Seydou Abagri, who was customarily escaped by the Nayiri. And this is the only recognized chief that we think there is a chief. Their claim that Anachima Azuka has been gazetted and acknowledged by the National House of Chiefs since May 1984 is probable falsehood for the records available. Furthermore, it is tried knowledge that gazetting a chief does not make one a chief, which Otunfo Osisitu also alluded to in previous interview. To further expose the hypocrisy and double standard of the Kusasi People Congress, we asked them where was their principle of gazetting a chief that makes you a chief when in September 1979, the then gazetted chief of Bawku Na Alhaji Adam Zanjo, then vice president of the Upper Regional House of Chiefs. This predates the division of Upper East into Upper West and Upper East. It was one. And he was the vice president of the Upper East Regional House of Chiefs. And yet they said he wasn't a chief and went ahead to purportedly esteem a chief, who they called a Bawku Nawa. It is obvious that they are afraid a committee of eminent chiefs will expose their fraud and make it clear to Ghanaians populace that the Bawku traditional area has, since its inception and creation by His Royal Majesty Nayiri of Mampurugu in 1721, been part of the Mampurugu Kingdom. They claim that the band was about 2 royal gates of the same family fighting, which is not the case in Bawku. Only shows how ignorant they are with regards to the Bawku chieftaincy conflict, or deliberately concealing facts. It is also a tried knowledge that when the self-proclaimed Kusasi attempted usurpation of the Bawku skin in 1957 and in 1984, in the name of fighting for Kusasi, they pitched Kusasi from the same family against each other in several occasions by illegally claiming to skin one family member and in skinning the other. This was the case in areas. Like Binaba, Zibula, and Pusiga, where the case of Pusiga, an uncle chieftaincy was supposedly confiscated for a nephew. They did the same by pitching tribes and families together in Bisa area like Kulugungu. This was the mess and evil they created. It is very clear they were not fighting for Kusasi, but for their selfish interests and political interests by Reverend Azuma and his Kusa People Congress doing. That these deep-seated differences that still exist in the towns and villages mentioned above, together with cases in places like Bawku, Binduri, Tanga, etc., where commoners without royal lineage, like Anachima, were used as stooges in place of royals who have founded Bawku, and they are the rightful chiefs in the Bawku traditional area. It is through mediation by eminent chief, well versed in tradition, that these deep issues can be resolved. It is very refreshing and perhaps a good piece of information for young Kusasi that the Kusa People Congress has admitted that the Bawku area, Kusasi settlement, and several areas of present-day Upper East region have been under the jurisdiction of His Royal Majesty, the Nayiri, prior to 1932. Their acknowledgement is marked improvement of their decades-old false propaganda that prior to 1932, the Bawku area, including Kusasi settlements, had never been subject to the authority of the Nayiri. Their attempt to introduce the British again in their newly found 1911-1912 claim, as they did for their failed 1932 propaganda, is probable falsehood. All well-meaning Ghanaians know very well the history of the founding of the Moldagbani Kingdom by Nadewa started in Pusuga in the Bawku area in 13th and 14th century, and that after his demise, the founding of the Mampurugu Tushiwa, the first Nayiri, took charge of the entire area. This undisputed fact goes back to over 400 years before the arrival of the British in the Northern Territories. Then again, the Bawku scheme was specifically founded in 1921 by Mampusis, which is over 170 years before the arrival of the British to the Gold Coast. And in the Northern Territory, in 1896, it wasn't until 1896 that the first British stepped in the grounds of Gambaga, and subsequently Bawku in 1907, during the reign of the Bawku Naba, Naba Na Muhammadu Mamboda. Very importantly, to expose the lies and deceit of Reverend Azuma and his acolytes, we attach for you the Gold Coast Colonial List of Chiefs for the year 1902. As my colleague said, go and verify this information for your own independent use, which clearly captured all the Bawku area, including areas like Binduri, Zibila, Binaba, Charles, Chelsea, Kugri, etc., under the Mampurugu, with the Bawkus being specifically occupied by the Bawku Naba, Muhammadu Mamboda. So, will Reverend Azuma and his cohorts of failed modern-day historians revise their history further from 1911 to 1902, just as they revised from 1932 to 1911? Would they repent and apologize for misleading innocent Kusa CU? It is this false propaganda of 1932, which they have transformed into 1911, that they used to recruit innocent Kusa CU into fighting a senseless and false struggle for what? Independence. How can you have independence of an area you have never been achieved, or you have not arrived there first? We all know by our history that to own an area in those days was either you arrived first or by conquest. So this clearly, the documented history prove that these are false claims. Okay, it is this false propaganda 1932 which have transformed the 1911. So we sincerely hope that the innocent Kusasi you would take note of this expose and know that there was nothing like colonization of Kusasi, and that Mampusi had been chiefs of the area long before the arrival of the British, and Reverend Azuma should accordingly revise the date of 1911 and 2012. Point number 6. The above historical and customary facts expose their claim of electing their own tribal chiefs in 1957, because such an attempt was null and void for historical and customary laws of the area. No wonder they have since then relied on politicians for favors. They hide the fact that the politically motivated committee of inquiry report was quashed by the High Court in favor of the Mampusi, and the 1958 Appeals Court judgment, which suffered from the basic principle of natural justice, was also quashed by the NLCD 112, thereby restoring the status quo of over 240 years of the Bawku scheme in favor of Mampusi, together with over 500 chieftaincy cases that were similarly affected by the politicians at that time. In the same way, they hide the fact that there is a ruling by the National House of Chiefs on the Bawku issue in 1983 in favor of we democracy, and this was after their so-called 1958 appeal court ruling. Furthermore, there is absolutely no belabor the point that about 2003 Supreme Court ruling, because it has been obvious to every Ghanaian that no declaration was made on chieftaincy. The Kusa propaganda for several years was brought to naught when all Ghanaians saw the said ruling and realized that it had absolutely nothing in legitimizing the stooge Anachima Abogrago. It is therefore not surprising that Reverend Azuma of the Kusa People's Congress, instead of showing the court ruling to journalists, was already seen brandishing a newspaper report. Point number.
Hey, Reverend Azuma. Ya yimna nlapse bosa mao. Ya wuma kafwa ya yimna